and we have the bottles for sale. I would like to welcome everyone on Zoom. Sorry you're not here to have a little taste of something, but you can still go on Give Smart and buy a bottle. I'd like to invite Judy Worth to come up with our four-way test, pledge, and inspiration.
All right, if you'll stay standing, let's do the pledge first. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the four-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Please be seated. You tell I was a school teacher once upon a time. All right, if we're ready to begin. If we're ready to begin. All right. I've been up here a few times before, not doing this, but talking about the Rotary Leadership Institute. And one of the courses in that curriculum is called Ethics and Vocational Service, which always leads us to have a conversation about our first step. When we talk about ethics, leads to what is truth and how do we know what's true? And particularly these days, when we're in so much conflict over almost everything from the presidential election in November to Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce at the Super Bowl. So I'd like to share a reflection today. Is Buzz Carmichael here back somewhere? Buzz, this is something you shared on your Facebook feed. Yeah. Actually, you didn't say it, you borrowed it. It came from a gentleman named Bill Parrish, who lives up in Glendale, Ohio. There you go. Mr. Parrish says, we've become accustomed to old narratives. You know, the ones that have been told so many times the same way that we just accept and repeat them over and over again without much thought. The ones that make us feel comfortable with what we think we know. However, when a new narrative comes along, something different than what has been consistently communicated over time, it can challenge us, especially those who consider themselves the experts, the landlords and keepers of information and what is acceptable to the status quo. I'm finding history to be very compelling, depending on who's telling the story. I've discovered over time that a well-researched perspective is priceless. The facts are always questionable, and truth, it depends on whose truth. We can't change history. You can share a story and I can share the same story and it's different. Different because we're different people, a shared experience, but a different perspective. If you're not accustomed to hearing a perspective from someone who doesn't look like you, sharing a story that you believed you already knew, it can be a bit intimidating. That's why conversations are so important, creating safe spaces for meaningful dialogue. He concludes that passage with an invitation to attend an Underground Railroad event up in Glendale, Ohio. And he says, come expecting to learn and experience. You'll be surprised at what you discover that's been here all the time. I'd like to suggest that Rotary membership can also provide a similar experience, that attending a meeting, participating in a service project, taking part in a Rotary exchange program, or attending a Rotary conference, statewide, nationwide, international, can offer us the opportunity to exchange our stories in a safe environment with people whose experience and perspectives are different from ours and can open up our worlds. That's a little bit serious. Going to shift gears and read a prayer to conclude. And this is with a nod to our speaker who's going to be talking about spirits, good spirits, I hope. This is a prayer sent to me by my 91-year-old Aunt Joyce down in Texas. She's a volunteer at a senior center and she leads the kazoo choir there. So here's her prayer for good spirits. God grant me the ability to laugh today, if not audibly, then in my heart. Help me to lighten up and find some relief and humor when things get too intense. Show me how to be sensitive to others and to gently lead them in direction to smile. Come cheer my heart right now with your own witty perspective on my life. Indeed, I can't add an inch to my height or a minute to my existence by worrying, no matter how hard I grit my teeth and clench my fists. God, I'm chuckling now and I'm ready to face my world.
Thank you, Julia. Let's remember to silence our cell phones and keep conversations, so we're having a lot of fun, to a minimum, because out of respect for the people that are on the podium. I'd like to invite Mike Baker to come up, or Paul Stanley or something. Okay, oh, there's Paul. Okay, to come up. I just saw you standing there. And do the introduction of guests.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to welcome all the guests here we have today. First, I'd like to introduce Mr. Tim Mueller, if you could stand. He's from Flowood, Mississippi. There he is. Now we have several Rotarians who have more than one guest. I'd like to introduce Marcus Cross. Where is Marcus?
Right here.
Go ahead. You want to introduce your guest?
Yes, I'll wait for that. I have two guests with me today. The first is Alyssa McKenzie. She is the new development director at the Living Arts and Science Center here in Lexington. She's doing great work for us. I'm the board president this year, and I'm just thrilled, truly thrilled and honored to be working with Alyssa this year. Fine addition to our staff. Thank you for coming, Alyssa. And then a good friend of mine, John Putwin, who is currently running for the 76th House seat here in the state of Kentucky. And he is, I think, going to be a fine addition to our legislators, and a great man with a lot of great ideas for all of us here in Kentucky. So thanks for coming, Josh.
Thank you very much, Marcus, for bringing your guest. Laura Mobley Corn. Where is she? Please introduce your guest.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to introduce Sarah Diener, right? With Always Best Care, and welcome her. We'd love to have her.
Thank you, Laura. We have DG Gridley. There you are.
Hello, I'd like to introduce our new home improvement director, Peter Anderson. He comes to us with 40 years plus of general contracting experience in Hawaii. And you can talk to him later about why he would move here from Hawaii. We're happy to have him.
I think Jenny Schneer has a couple of guests. Mike right behind her.
You don't know who's coming until you say the name, Paul, so then Mike doesn't know who to look for. I have two guests with me. So Paige Mazzoni is here. She's with Serve Pro, and she is one of the lucky people that's taken my spin class and survived multiple times. So I'm so delighted that we finally be able to get her to come to a meeting. And then Rob Reddick with Republic Bank. I'm not gonna get the bank wrong today. He walked on over here because he heard there was bourbon to try. And so we got a couple of guests. I'm glad they were able to join us.
Okay, next Rotarian, Dylan Harper.
Hey everyone, to my left, I've got Yumi Ogunbushi. He is with Clean Space. He's a product marketer, and he also runs his own marketing agency, this fractional CMO. Please welcome. I mean, we're eating the lunch table shuffle. I've got some guests here and there. To my right is Aaron Street. He is the co-founder of Clean Space. Clean Space is a startup, tech startup in the residential cleaning service industry. So they bring residential cleaners to homeowners so that it's kind of a marketplace. So we work. And my last guest, very familiar face, Carol Seiler, the executive director of Women Leading Kentucky. So you know, a lot of Rotarians have been going to Women Leading Kentucky events for several years into the luncheons. So that's been great to get Carol to one of our lunches.
Thank you very much, Dylan. I'm looking for Susie Basham. Where's Susie?
At the bourbon table. Tony Garrett's.
Tony, I guess.
Mike, oh, okay.
It's like living it, putting the box in the hen house, putting me back there. I don't even know where Matt is. This is Matt Tab, he's one of our, he's in the, Wilbur's, and he's going to be a new Rotarian, he's with the Best Construction.
Very good, thank you. Now I'd like to introduce Mike Baker.
I'm financial advisor with Alliance Financial.
So a warm welcome to all you guests today. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. With the lottery, Cheyenne. Okay, let's see if I get lucky. Glasses. Do we know? How much? 452 is the pot and the ace of clubs. Yeah, I know. I'm not picking the cards. That would be too convenient for me. Okay, first number, if I can read it. 9821. So close. 9821. Not to say that you won't win, but come on. But I'm but I am picking another number. Yeah. One more.
You get $1 back.
Thank you for your contribution. Yeah. And now the second number is 9899. 9899. Oh, wow. Buzz, you haven't been called up in a while.
What's in your?
I know.
Hello, let's get a winner.
Okay.
Winner, chicken dinner? No. Thank you for your contribution. I know. Celebrating birthdays this week and next week, because next week is our 5th Thursday. We will not have a meeting, but we do have a social event. Joe Bark, David Jones, Jeff Stone, Roger Baird, Jen Foster, Kim Clark, Tom Lester, Jeff Thompson, and Tom Hathaway. Happy birthday, Rotarians. In your wheel horse, there's a correction to the speaker on March 7th. It is actually Haviland Argo, who will be talking about the restoration of Latrobe's Hope Villa. Let's see what else. Tomorrow is our second early morning mixer. Thank you to the PR and marketing committee for putting that together. You guys have done a fabulous job, and we've had a tremendous amount of success with prospective members coming out of that event with only one event under our belt. So this is the second one. I would encourage as many Rotarians to attend as possible, because we are, getting a lot of interest for Rotary from this. And it's a lot of new people that you can connect with for your own business as well. It's tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock to 9:30 at 46 Solutions in the Lexington Green shopping area. If you have any questions, you can see Jenny or Dylan after the meeting. Next week, again, the 5th Thursday, and we have trivia night. Eric Brooks, can you come up to the podium? Share some exciting info.
Thank you, Kim. I'm told I have 20 seconds. Far be it for me to stand between Rotarians and bourbon. Yes, we will be playing trivia next week at the Columbia on Richmond Road. This is brought to you by Local Trivia Action. If any of you frequent bars or restaurants in Lexington, you may have either seen them or participated with them. I do this pretty much every Thursday night at Whole Foods. So if you want to come out and help us challenge that giant team that seems to always win over there, please join us. Next week, I'll bring my team to the Rotary event. So it is a team thing, so you need to think about teams and a team name. And someone on your team to send your answers via cell phone to the person running the trivia action. There is a QR code on the card on your table to sign up. It's lots and lots of fun, and I have specifically instructed the Local Trivia Action folks as to the nature and age of our group. So hopefully there will be no Taylor Swift questions or pop rock in the last 5 to 10 years. They promised me they would do that, so if they don't, that's on them. Anyway, lots of fun. Hope to see you there.
Thank you, Eric. And I think I hijacked Dylan coming up and talking about the morning mixer. Do you have anything to add, Dylan, since I meant to call you up?
Just last event, so last month we had about 45 people attend. So that was Rotarian and non-Rotarian. I would say about 2/3 were non-Rotarians. So those are really good for getting our name out there, getting people inspired about who we are. We would love to just have many Rotarians go as possible to help share the word. And
Thank you, Dylan. And now to introduce one of our newest Rotarians, Tom Lester. Please join me at the podium.
Thank you, Madam President. It gives me a great deal of pleasure today to introduce the newest member of the Lexington Rotary Club, Matt Goebel. Matt was born in Prestonsburg and moved with his family to Lexington when he was a young lad of 6. He attended Sarah School, the 2nd through 4th grades, and then finished his elementary and secondary schooling in Cassidy, Morton, and Henry Clay. Played basketball and football at Henry Clay, was in the Beta and Key clubs. He attended Florida State University, where he graduated with a bachelor's degree in economics in 1999. Matt lived in Atlanta for 2 years following college, worked in sales for Telemeter.net and DSL.net, but eventually the call from his old Kentucky home was too much for him to resist anymore, and he moved back to Lexington in 2002 and began a career in real estate following receipt of his license. He discovered that he enjoyed appraisal part of the business more than sales, and has worked with Ben Campbell in that capacity for the past 17 years. My wife Frances and I were delighted when Matt asked us if he could marry our daughter Amy in the fall of 2020. They're now the proud parents of 2 amazing kids, as a grandfather, if I can make that judgment. Jackson, who is 2 years old, and Reese, who is now 7 weeks old today. Matt's main hobbies are scuba diving and travel, and he especially enjoys any place with warm, clear water. He also enjoys running and hiking. After attending our Rotary meeting with me for several months ago and talking with a number of you who introduced yourselves to him at the time, he expressed great interest in Rotary's central premise, which is service to the community. I will tell you that it took no convincing on my part to convince him to join an organization that places service above self. Please join me today in welcoming Matt as our newest member of the Lexington Rotary.
Okay, and now we have another new Rotarian to introduce, Dan Miller. Please come to the stage. Podium on the stage.
Well, I'm very pleased to introduce our newest by a couple of minutes. Rotarian Graham Marks. Graham grew up in Lexington. I met him when he was about 1 year old as a neighbor. And he practices law with Miller Griffin Marks for about 8 years now. He practices with his father, and both his grandfathers were attorneys, so I guess he just doesn't know any better. One thing that was pointed out in our last meeting, his grandfather was Walter Maddox, who was a member of our club. He also headed up Polio Plus for Rotary International. So Graham has a great legacy ahead of him. And one thing Mr. Maddox did, he made Graham a Paul Harris Fellow when you were born. So Graham, we look forward to a lot of service on your part.
Thank you.
And you'll be able to learn more about him in the wheel horse soon.
Thank you.
Now for the bourbon.
Yeah, now for the bourbon, right? All right. Without further ado, I've got to get your program back to the. Maybe you can do it, Max. I'd like to invite Michael Morrill to come up to the podium and introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Madam President. This is truly one of the high holy days of Rotary, in my opinion. Believe it or not, I met Max 3 weeks ago tonight, actually, at, guess what? Another bourbon tasting, where we debuted, Tony was there, our own Knob Creek Barrel Select, and it was delicious. Seriously, it's sold out too. No pressure, but you better get your bottles now. These will sell out. It was sold out before the end of the night. So it is absolutely wonderful. I'm going to speed this up because we're running a little late. I want him to get up here. So Max is from Indiana originally, but he's been with Beam Suntory for what, about 6 years now. He's the property or the territory sales manager. So please welcome Max Blankenhorn.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is my first Rotary event ever, but it's clearly my kind of meeting. You guys have whiskey, gambling, talks of trivia. Sign me up. This is really fun.
You can do that.
And Michael and Kim, thank you so much for having me here and kind of bringing me into the fold here to make this happen. You know, at Beam Suntory, of course, we love to make delicious spirits and specifically delicious bourbon. It's why I moved from DC to Kentucky to be on this team. But we also are committed to service to the community and getting back to the place that we make our product, enriching our local areas and our natural resources. And it's very important to us. And that's kind of why I've called this presentation Proof Positive. Little play on words, but we are, you know, doing a lot more out in the community than just making whiskey and kind of peddling that stuff. That's the fun part of our jobs. But you know, we'll talk a little later about some of the other things that our company and organization does, not just here in Kentucky, but actually kind of around the state, around the country, and really around the world to make it a better place for everybody. But you know, it couldn't be a presentation about Knob Creek and about bourbon without kind of talking about what bourbon is, the ABCs. Perhaps we're all a little more educated than your general group of folks that get together because we are here in Kentucky and it's our heritage. But it doesn't hurt to go back over. You know, sometimes people get a little bit confused on what makes bourbon bourbon. Let's remember that all bourbon is whiskey, not all whiskey is bourbon. And this kind of lays that out. So basically, you know, sometimes people are like, bourbon's got to be in Kentucky. Well, it actually doesn't. It has to be made in America. It's a protected product and native spirit of the United States. It was kind of put into congressional law in the 60s. You can make it in all 50 states. 95% of the world's bourbon is made here. And there are some good reasons as to why that is. But you can get bourbon in Hawaii. You can get bourbon in just about all corners of the country at this point. as I'm sure we're reading, how new distilleries are coming on board every day. And they're still coming in here in Kentucky. In fact, I think the newest, largest independent distillery just opened in Girard County, not too long ago. So like an hour south of here. It was the biggest investment in a new distillery. Garrett County, I'm not from here, you know. Is it Versailles? I can make fun of myself. Okay, so it's gotta be, at least 51% corn in the mash bill. That's the B. I'm sorry, that's the C. The A is American made. The B is for the barrel. I like to talk about the ABCs of bourbon. It's gotta be barreled in white oak, virgin charred white oak barrel. Actually just a container if you want to get really nerdy, but everybody uses barrels because they're easy to store and roll around. And then the D is about the distillation proof. So if you go above 160 proof when you're distilling that spirit, it's not bourbon anymore. You've stripped out all the flavor in that base spirit. You're making vodka. Whiskey, generally, the category of whiskey can go higher. And then the entry proof is important. So you can't enter the barrel any higher than 125 proof. Those are the ABCs in the bottle. You got to be at least 80 proof in the bottle. You're not going to see a 75 proof bourbon. And since we're talking about Knob Creek, we're talking about the James B. Beam Distilling Company, which is in Claremont, Kentucky. We're going to talk about the 8th generation that got us here. So humbly, Jake Bohm at the time, he was a German immigrant, moved to Kentucky at the end of the 18th century and was just a humble farmer. He was a good humble farmer though, so he had some excess grain at the end of the day. And at that time, to kind of store that and not let it spoil, it was best to distill it, and then you can use that to trade or as a commodity in the winter. So he was doing that, and kind of just, that was after his main job as a grist miller and farmer. It was his son David who really kind of commercialized our business. He made the brand, the Old Tub brand, at the well, actually call it Old Jake, but he made it at the Old Tub Distillery, not to confuse everybody here. And his son, David M., really brought that brand nationally. He moved the distillery closer to the railroad in Kentucky at the time. And that, of course, then was the access point to the rest of the country. So Old Tub, at that time, that was the mid-1800s, it became a national brand. Fast forward another generation, you get to the man on the bottle, and that's Jim Beam. Now Jim Beam, really the icon that he was, helped our company and the brand there weather the storm of Prohibition. He brought us up to Prohibition. He shuttered the doors. There's a lot of hearsay and rumors as to what folks were doing in the business at that time. We're not going to get into that. I only have a few minutes here. That's a long story and a good one to tell. But he reopened the doors when he was finally legally allowed to at our current distillery in Claremont, Kentucky in 1935. When he got the permit, he was up and running within 6 months. And so he saw that through. He was already like a 73-year-old man at that time, but he did it. And then he passed it off to his son, T. Jeremiah. Now, Jerry Beam was too busy making our brand an international icon to even have kids. So that's where there's a name shift, and his sister married Fred Booker No first and gave birth, they gave birth to Booker No, as we probably all know, Booker's, and the icon that is Booker No, larger than life character. And he kind of really brought bourbon through a really dark time, because at that point in history, 60s and 70s, people were shifting to drinking lighter spirits, clear spirits, beer. Bourbon was what their parents drank, and it wasn't very sexy or exciting. And we took it on the chin as an industry. This is before I was even born. But maybe some of you folks in the room remember the 70s, the 80s, and how, we weren't really doing the bourbon thing. Maybe whiskey was single malt scotch. That was exciting, but bourbon lived on the bottom shelf. It was kind of hot and blew your ears off. And Booker was like, well, what's going on? Like, there's amazing whiskey in my rick house. It's just sitting here. Nobody wants it. He was even making gifts around the Christmas time, holidays, for his friends, for his family. He was making the very first batches of Bookers in the 70s. He's getting his son, Fred, he was handwriting labels And he literally had Fred, one of the first jobs Fred did when he was on the payroll was to take these labels, have a candle on the table and singe the labels for these wine bottles that the bourbon was going into. And then they were giving those as Christmas gifts. A few kind of trickled out to the executives at Jim Beam Organization in Chicago at the time, and they were like, Booker, this stuff's amazing. Can we sell it? But if we do, we really want to bring the proof down. And Booker used some 4-letter words and said, absolutely not. Not if you're going to mess with what I'm making here, which is unfiltered, uncut bourbon, right out of the barrel, right into the bottle, and you can taste it. It's amazing. Please do not mess with it. If you do it that way, sure, we can commercialize it. So in '88, Booker's hit the market. It was a big success. He then kind of made a few other brands, including Knob Creek. We call these the small batch collection. Really what he did was he started to add value and showcase that bourbon was as exciting and full of flavor and nuance and super premium appeal as single malt Scotch in the day, in the 80s and the 90s. And his son, who's pictured here, 7th generation master distiller, on the right there, Fred, very much took that torch and carried it forward and fought the good fight and kind of led us through, thanks to his hard work and all of his comrades here in Kentucky, preaching the good word of quality bourbon to everybody and took us into the boom. And we know the boom, we're living in the boom. We've lived through the boom. I started working kind of in the boom. Bourbon is hotter than ever, thanks to all their hard work. And Freddie, who's my age, is so ahead of his time. He is just like head down, innovating like crazy, making this wild stuff. You've seen probably his brand out there. It's called Little Book, where he's bringing a spotlight to not just bourbon, but blended whiskey, because that was a 4-letter word back in the day. But he is taking all this incredible whiskey that's not technically bourbon like we saw the ABCs, but when you taste what he's doing and innovating, like it's absolutely phenomenal stuff. It's coming out of Kentucky. It's bringing the spotlight still to the bluegrass, but in a new and exciting way. So if that's the future of where our industry is going, it's a pretty exciting place to be. I'm clearly talking too long about these guys in bourbon, but I'm passionate about it. I'm just trying to share that with everybody in the room. And we're finally going to get to what some of you have tasted. I know I stand in the way of the folks that abstain from tasting, so I'll be a little quick. But what we did back in the fall was a selection for the Rotary Club, and we did it via a sample kit. So there's a couple ways to do it. You can go down to the distillery and you can taste it at the distillery and get like a tour experience. And maybe we'll do that in the future. This, we were kind of nimble with how we could approach this. So we did a sample kit. So our barrel team finds whiskey that has already met standards as to what would be good enough to go just on its own from the barrel into the bottle. So it met that quality. And then we try to like highlight some different flavor profiles in the 3 samples that we send out. And so you're not just getting, 3 whiskeys that were laid down from the same distillation run, put in the same warehouse, the same floor. Even though when you do that, which is crazy about bourbon, is they're going to taste wildly different after 9 years of aging, because there's just so much complexity that draws from that individual barrel, and every barrel, like a snowflake, is unique. I think I have the stats. Great. Okay, fantastic. So even on our Claremont campus, where our distillery is located, where all this whiskey is made, we have 27 different aging rick houses, rack houses, warehouses. You ever hear those terms in our industry? They all mean the same thing. It just depends, Versailles, Versailles, whatever you want, rick house, rack house, warehouse. It's where we age the whiskey. Over here, that's H. H was built, get back in front of the microphone, so I've got some folks online. H was built in 1950. Cool thing about that warehouse is it's 9 stories tall. We don't allow, the state of Kentucky doesn't allow 9-story warehouses to be built anymore. Does anybody want to venture a guess, is brave enough to wonder why you can't build a 9-story rack house, rick house, warehouse? Fires. I heard it. Fires. Yeah, fire trucks can't reach up to 9 stories. I mean, if you didn't already know this, Whiskey's pretty flammable in the barrel. We've had some bad PR runs, at our company. Some other folks have had some really bad PR runs. So yeah, it's cool. It's in a 9-story grandfathered in warehouse. It's coated yellow. We actually have to coat our warehouses. Some of them actually you'll go and you'll see these anywhere. Everybody kind of has similar coats. We have some that are red, which means we've braced them. We're trying to keep them upright. But they were built so long ago and they're all made of wood and eventually we're gonna have to let all the whiskey run out of there and rebuild. So this is coated yellow, which means it's not fully safe to go in. I think if you go in, you have to wear a hard hat. So only as needed to go into this warehouse. Of course, folks on our barreling team went in and grabbed this whiskey after 9.5 years. It's on the 7th floor. Now, Knob Creek is an interesting brand. It only lives in the middle of a warehouse. So never from the top floors, never from the bottom floors, generally 4, 5, 6, or 7. So you all got a sample that was the highest it could possibly have been to also be Knob Creek. And it aged for over 9 summers. That raw sample was 132.84 proof. So you all had a really good time.
Yes, we did.
Tasting this whiskey. I didn't get to try the samples, but oh boy, even with a little taste like that, that'll get you there. And clearly you guys loved it. We were chatting, Kim and I were chatting.
Yeah, I mean, we had Mandy, Susie Basham and her husband, Peggy, John Wright, and my husband and I invited Chris Peck. Sorry you missed out, Chris. He wasn't able to attend, but we had fun and it was funny. What we ended up with, everyone put down their 2 choices because we had 3 to pick from and everyone picked this selection C. So hopefully you'll enjoy it. And if not, you can talk to them.
Exactly. So that's always great when there's unanimous support behind a selection. Sometimes people have to duke it out, but clearly they liked what they tasted. I can just like seeing the stats here. I love what's in this bottle because fantastic. Whereas I love the 9-story ones. And then when it's that, that's great. 132 proof. We did bring it down. We bottled all of the Knob Creek at 120 for consistency's sake. And some weird nuances with the TTB, the federal organization responsible for labeling. This is just like minutia behind the scenes stuff I don't necessarily need to know about, but 120 is still a fantastic barrel proof and proof of bourbon to taste. Sometimes people think that, they get so far down this bourbon rabbit hole that they only want to drink hazmat bourbon, which is like a term for like, you can light this thing on fire with a match. You like scientifically, you can't taste all what's going on when it's over 100 and I think it's like 115 proof. So you're truly like, you're like not allowing the full bouquet of flavor when you try things at that high proof. And then back to Booker and back to his adamant nature that his whiskey should be unfiltered and uncut. It's not that Booker sat around his kitchen table at night and drank 129 proof bourbon. He made himself a Kentucky tea, which meant that he would take his Bookers at barrel strength and add water to it. He would wave it under his kitchen faucet. Depending on what kind of day he had, he might let it sit under that stream a little shorter, than other days, but he always brought it down. And that's to open it up. So challenge your friends that are so strong-headed and they have to drink these 130, 140 proof, or they only want it at barrel strength. Like they're missing out on the flavor, and I don't know who they're trying to impress, because at the end of the day, we just want to taste good whiskey. And here's on to some of the stuff that I'm really passionate about talking about, and that's our nature positive, consumer positive, community positive stuff. Nature positive, we are working with watersheds because at the end of the day, if we don't have clean limestone filtered water here in Kentucky, we can't make whiskey. So right across the road from us, if anyone's ever been to the James B. Beam Distilling Company, we have the oh my gosh, Lake Jim Beam Lake at the state park there, and I don't know why I'm drawing a total blank. It's where the trolls are there. Yes, thank you. The Bernheim Forest. Yes. at Bernheim, we have a partnership with Bernheim, and that's to support that watershed. And it's the lake at Bernheim is Jim Beam Lake. And we draw a lot of the water from there. And then I'll fast forward here. Some of the big key things we do here in Lexington to support the community is, of course, Kim and I have worked on Dancing with the Stars for many years now with our company. And we are always looking for new ways to support your biggest, I want to say it's your biggest fundraising event of the year. And we'll continue to support that partnership and get creative. We brought out the cocktail trailer from Maker's Mark every year, donated the product to be poured there.
It's been awesome.
We have over here the medicinal whiskey charity in Lexington. There's a gala at the Carrick House every December. That's a huge event that we've supported. Also, one, it's a fantastic event. They raise a lot of money for medical charities, but specifically it ties back to Fred No, our 8th generation master distiller. He actually received a kidney a few years ago, saved his life. And the physician that did the transplant is a big supporter of the Medicinal Whiskey Society. So it's really close to home. Here coming up, we're gonna do a really cool fundraiser out in Richmond. So we get beyond Lexington, but really last slide kind of just goes to show you some figures and you can read it on your own, but we're always trying to give back. Our company is fantastic in that. They even give us a few days off a year just to do charity events that we can tie into or that we can create on our own. All to say, we're not, like I said, we're not just making whiskey. We are also trying to support the communities the same way that you guys do. Service to others is very important to Beam Suntory.
Thank you. Anything? Max is going to be back at the table, so if you have specific profile questions, maybe you can ask him. I don't know if Susie can answer or Paul, but if you haven't had a taste, please do. And these are for sale. So I brought 60 bottles with me, but we do have more back at my office. So anyway, with that, I would say thank you all for being here, all of our guests. Hope you join us again. Thank you for the tasting committee that we had fun. And we have a Rotary sticker on the back. So hopefully you'll buy more than one bottle so that way you'll collect them, right? Because we'll do something different next year. Thank you again. And with that, we're adjourned.